Again, unless we have people out in the field walking stores every week, there's no way we ever have any perspective on something like this. And so, like looking at on-shelf availability just in the tracker, this is updated weekly. And I check Storesight all the time, and I rarely pull up Storesight and there isn't a new, photo or an updated data point in there for me.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Conversations on Retail with Storesight. I'm here with my co-host Henry. My name is Mark. We've both been in the industry a while. You know that by now, but we look a little different today.
Yeah, Mark. Just a reminder for our friends out there that we are Storesight, but powered by Field Agent.
That's right.
Those of you that knew us as Field Agent's in the background powering the collections for all of this great data. So powered by Field Agent today. That's me.
Yep. And if you guys aren't watching and just listening, picture me in purple and Henry in about the brightest orange you can possibly imagine. So we've got the company colors represented today. We also have a special guest with us here. I'm going to let Dagan Nolan introduce himself in just a minute, but Henry and I will continue to walk everybody through changes in the retail industry, especially as it relates to insights, data, and how all that's changing with technology and all the advancements across the industry right now. So you may remember at Storesight, we talk about uncovering the black box that sits on top of the retail environment, especially the store. Henry, it's that visibility at the shelf that we've said really is one of those things that people haven't had access to. We're trying to do something about that.
Yeah, for sure. We made the announcement back in February, and it's taken the industry by storm. We're really excited about it.
And today we're getting to talk about something that's actually something we've referenced in our previous episodes, mostly because it's a metric or a piece of data that we feel like we're really bringing to the industry, at least doing it in a different way. And we're going to spend today talking about the difference in those two things. But to do that, we want someone who actually lives it and breathes it daily. Henry and I have been off the desk of actually calling on buyers or retailers for way too long now. So we got to bring in people who've got the right perspective.
Yeah. Good to have you, Dagan.
Yeah, Dagan, tell folks who you are, where you come from, what you've been doing.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So my name's Dagan. I've been in CPG for a little over 15 years, started on the retail side, building cereal planograms at Sears and Kmart. And then spent a little time on the consulting side with Nielsen, helping develop their assortment tool. And then made the switch over to manufacturer side with ConAgra. And so work primarily with them on category management, category leadership side, specifically helping grow the snacking portfolios, working on category strategy and the national strategy for them there. And then more recently I've been with Kimberly-Clark and now with Riverside supporting the brand MadeGood.
Yeah. Well, if you guys have not tried MadeGood, jump into those products. I'll tell you, my family, we're habitual snackers. I think we came from that generation. I've got middle school kids at home. I was telling Dagan earlier, the MadeGood brand is regularly being thrown in the lunchbox. We got some allergy issues, some health conscious perspectives in our home, and it's a good option for that. So, a little shameless plug for some great food there, Dagan. We love playing in the snacks category.
Yeah, I mean that's how I found the company was going through my pantry. And I'm looking through all of our favorite food and saying which of these brands would I be interested in working for, and that's how I ended up making it. So,
thanks for joining us. Let's jump in here, guys. Today's topic is 3 simple letters, SOS, and it's not as scary as it sounds. We're talking about share of shelf, and some people hearing that right now think, I know what that is.
Yeah.
And that means you haven't listened to us in our past episodes, because there's a difference between share of sales and share of shelf. And not many people measure share of shelf. And the ones that do it, they do it in some pretty old school ways. We're going to talk about that in a minute. We wanted to invite Dagan in for a couple reasons. One, he has a ton of experience. I would say, considering the different conferences we've run into each other at and the different industry groups, he's being intentionally innovative in this space, feeling like category management can be done a little bit different and a little bit more progressive nowadays. That's the route we like to take. but also because he's been diving in with us as one of our beta users and now customers around our share of shelf data set. And so we're going to get into some practicals here in a minute of at least the needles he expects it to move and the things that he's looking at. But I think it's important to start with defining what we're even talking about. So, Henry, ground us on the concept of what we mean by share of shelf.
Yeah. Share of shelf has always mattered in the retail and CPG space, but the ability to measure it in a consistent and accurate way at scale has been the missing piece for the industry. And with the advent, with all this technology and our ability now to go into retail, any store, any place, anytime, and collect that information and bring that back in a cost-effective way, that's opened the gate for this thing we now call share shelf.
Yeah. Dagan, I kind of want to point to you too. What do you think about when you hear share of shelf, maybe today versus even months or years ago? What has it meant to you in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, share of shelf to someone who's outside of our industry, right? They would automatically think it's how much space you take up on the shelf, right? And that is, in layman's terms, what it is. However, the measurement of that, to your point, has been almost impossible up until your guys' development of this tool. Back when we were first working on when I was working on planograms, we would be using something like JDA to measure linear space on shelf within a planogram, or maybe a group of planograms, and then more recently, without using something that's sort of like a planogramming software or something like that, our share of shelf would simply just be a share of like ACV or distribution. So, if we have an item selling in a store, that would count as as one item on shelf. But obviously the big gap there is the difference between having an item selling and having three facings of an item. And whether you're one of the share leaders, and if you're share leader in the category, you're usually you have multiple facings of your products. If you've just gotten, into a retailer with new distribution, you probably only have one facing. And from a TDP or an ACV standpoint, you're looking at distribution. If you're selling, that counts as one. You don't actually have the in-store execution of that. And I think going back to how we used to do it with planograms as well too, I experienced all the headaches of, spending all this time working with buyers to build these beautiful planograms. Then I'd go out in the store and look at, okay, what does that look like in store? It's totally different. The store execution, there's a few retailers who do a really good job with it, but most retailers, when it comes from planogram to store, it's rarely the same thing. Where we're going with share shelf here that you guys have developed, this is real in-store measurement of what the shelf looks like. And now we can actually start to really get an idea of space to sales. So share of shelf leads to space to sales indexing and evaluation, right? And that ultimately helps buyers understand how productive certain brands or items are for their category.
Yeah, I want to hone in on a few things you said, but I have to start with what I was thinking about coming into this recording. And I don't know why this came to me, but I'm thinking about our space and share shelf a lot like the taxi industry was back in the day. And the category really of taxi driving, we totally different now, and we all have better ways of doing that. But taxis just felt like a sucky experience that people just didn't think could be any better. And then all of a sudden, people like Uber came along and said, "Hey, I know this has been a bad experience. There's a better option." But we had to be educated. We had to trust it, and that's how I feel like we're kind of in some of these metrics we're rolling out are in that space. It's everybody knows there's been gaps. Dagan, I want to actually hone in on the 3 or 4 areas you talked about how it used to be done in a minute. However, I don't think there's been ways to get it done until you get innovative or do things like what we're doing with crowdsourcing plus innovative technology. Henry, what do you see as far as that maybe historical, views of share of shelf versus maybe how people need to be thinking about it today?
Yeah, the historical perspective of this is it's either scan metrics or very cumbersome and awkward, human-prone error ways of auditing it.
The old clipboard approach.
The old clipboard.
You spent some time in front of a planogram before writing stuff down?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, we used to go, like you said, the old way. We'd go out in stores and we'd go count facings, or we would take pictures of those and then off a shelf, and then we'd go home and try to add things up and do it that way. And so that was the best way to do it. However, that would just take forever, and it would not, like, it wasn't real time. We'd do that maybe once a year, right? Then we've got to house it. Oh, I mean, we'd go out and we'd look at. So we would have our reps go out, if there was someone in the Northeast, they'd go out and check out some retailers, or like down in Florida, we'd have someone go check Publix. We'd go walk maybe two Publix stores once a year, right?
Yeah. You might get 100 total stores. You probably are distributed in about 10,000.
Scan Metrics was the only thing that was out there that would get proxy, for the industry. It was available. It was consistent. There's a certain degree of quality with that, but it was not measuring share of shelf. It measured, as Dagan was saying, these points of distribution and so forth. So, yeah, I think the approach that we're taking now and that we're launching into the industry is that we now have a way to tell you at any given time on a consistent basis what's going on the shelf and what your share of that activity is. So it's an exciting time. It's enabled by all this tech and the AI that we're generating through Storesight.
Yeah, I think something you mentioned there too. Yeah, Henry, just like you mentioned, like one of the things too, and like I alluded to it in terms of like the frequency that we're doing these audits as well too. And even if you're using planograms, which probably are the most accurate, distribution metrics or scan data, that helps as well too. But you're not getting a real time, like, I mean, the way that you're constantly updating with new pictures and you can see your share of shelf kind of moving up and down. That can become an indicator for you as well too. Okay, I just I gained 2 points of share of shelf. Is that because a retailer did an off-cycle change, or something's going on with a competitor? There's now I'm able to kind of get this real-time measurement of this, and that can drive all kinds of conversations just from being able to track that. It's something where we never even talked about it because no one ever knew what was going on.
Yeah, it just wasn't a solution. So everybody kind of did what was right in their own minds. Sometimes it's just a few stores. Sometimes it's 20 or 30 stores. But still, it was single point in time, or the most common mod or planogram. And you just kind of close your eyes and say, all the planograms out there are the same, right? And they were good in one way, but they were terribly flawed in another way, right? Well, at least you had something to start with.
And we know what that leads to, right? That leads to, it's a good internal measure.
Yeah.
Problem with internal measures is you don't drive ROI and you don't drive retail execution decisions with your merchant partners. And those opportunities to take some of these, like, used to be internal sacred events and calculations you'd share with leadership and across your team, you get the data set accurate and actionable enough, then it becomes this powerful tool to actually take to your retailer partners and say, well, hold on a second. This isn't just a few people with clipboards anymore. This isn't some bespoke program we do once a year. This is dynamically measured daily, and look at what your trends have been. And look how that compares to your share of sales. We got some work to do. Dagan, you were mentioning some examples as we were prepping for this on just how you were thinking about comparing some of the different metrics that you can even see in today's type of tooling. You mind talking about how you think about share, space versus facings versus where it's positioned on the shelf?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things too, as we've been able to get access to the tool and play around and just kind of learn what it can actually do is, you guys have the diamond or the strike zone coverage as well too in there, which is highlighting not just how much space are you taking up, but what's the quality of that space, right? So the first hurdle is kind of for a lot of us on the emerging brand side. Coming from big CPG, was about holding your space and kind of defending that space. But on the emerging brand side, it's about getting in the door and then improving your placement in there. So we've been able to do some quick reviews as well, just with the tool already, to be able to compare potentially two retailers where we have 5% share of shelf, but our strike zone quality, like our quality of our placement, is significantly different. We might even have some retailers where our share of shelf is even higher, but again, the quality is not as good. And now we're able to take that, measure it, track it, compare that against how our sales contribution and how our volume, compares in those different retailers relative to the category. And it just takes the conversation to the next level.
Yeah, the ability now to really prove out that these strike zone areas on the shelf matter, right? I have a story of a client who, from a TDP standpoint, when they got the mod returned to them, they held their ground. They maintained space, and they started tracking their sales. And a few weeks into it, they realized their sales was dropping. And what had happened was, while they had the same TDP, their brand got moved to a lesser place on the shelf. And at that item happened to be the number one SKU in that category. And they saw major decreases in sales for the entire category. And they realized it was out of the strike zone. And these are the kinds of things that are difference makers in a company's year, in their ability to grow the business. And this is the kind of thing that will be able to help people understand what's going on. The quality of the shelf placement you got matters just as much as getting the right facings and so forth. So new capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the facing piece of it is one of like the Shangri-La metrics in category management is this concept of incrementality, right? Is how incremental are you to the category? And I remember when I was working, getting deep into planograms and all of that, we were trying to understand the incrementality of a facing. So if I have space on shelf for two facings, do I need two facings of one product, or do I need one facing of each? What's going to drive the most volume? And in a lot of cases, people say, well, I think it makes sense for us to have two different items on shelf here because we want more variety for the consumer. But in a lot of cases, when you have some of these higher velocity SKUs like you're talking about, Henry, where you've got the number one item in the category, that item needs those facings. And we start to be able to potentially track the incrementality of a facing. We had one customer who was giving one of our items, 6 or 7 facings. And we went to them, we said, hey, we know you have a lot of facings on here. And we had no idea of knowing this. In our scan metrics, it shows up as one TDP, right? But we saw on Storesight, we were looking in the pictures, and I went to our account team. I said, guys, we have all these facings of this item. Wouldn't it make more sense for us to go in and maybe try to get some other items on shelf? And so it opened up that conversation with the retailer, with the buyer, and they came back and they said, no, you know what, these stores that we have all these facings, we really need it. And it was super interesting. But I think at the end of the day, those are conversations that we're never even having, and it just builds that partnership with our buyers in a way that, again, the conversation's never really even gone there because of the lack of content and lack of measurement.
Yeah. I think it's a great place to actually take the combo for a second, because I think people understand the concept. I think you have to live it a little bit to understand that there's actually solutions out there now that are different. There's different metrics you can get to with technology like ours and as the industry progresses. But where the rubber meets the road in the line review or in the decisions in the layout room, right? Depending on where you're at, what seat, what size company. And so, Henry, how do you expect buyer meeting dynamics to change in the future, or retailer conversations to change for folks like Dagan and others?
Well, I think Dagan just gave us some great examples of being able to take us a retailer's key competitive set of other retailers, and to be able to say, "Hey, let's look at what's going on at retailer A and B for this category," and be able to show the different configurations and share that's been given to a brand within a category, and then be able to index that out relative to the POS sales. And you can make some great database stories they're pretty self-evident when you have all of that combined together to convince a buyer to do the right thing for the category.
Yeah, Dagan, how do you envision enabling your team or you in the room in the future looking different than it has in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just opens up so many more sort of avenues for conversation and partnership where, again, category reviews or conversations with the buyer, they have a dozen, if not, you know, 20, 30 other manufacturers that they are trying to work with. And so, why would they come to you and giving them a reason to trust you and bringing them new insights, and partnering with them to help them grow their stores. And so, as a smaller brand in the category with limited resources as we continue to grow, having a capability that basically allows us to virtually go in and look at any of their stores. They don't have the time to go out and do that stuff. We don't really have the resources or the people to go out and do these massive store audits and all of this stuff. But the tool gives us the ability to super quickly measure, track what's going on, and really make the conversation incredibly relevant for them, in a way that they honestly, even outside of going in and working with the space management team to work on planograms, store execution is a whole different story, right? And there's still one person. They can maybe try to have conversations with their store managers and try to do store works as well too, but they have so much going on. When on our end, we have the ability to come in and say, hey, like, we can help out, and we've got the ability to really kind of get virtually into the store across the country, across channels, and get all these different viewpoints and compare it and bring that in for them. Again, at the end of the day, for us as a retail partner, we're trying to make our buyers' jobs as easy as possible and help them grow, right? And they want to work with providers who are going to and vendors who are going to help them and care about helping them grow. So when we're able to do that, it really unlocks conversations and that partnership.
We love seeing our customers come to us and say, we just leveled up our buyer meetings, or in some cases, we got a handful of folks who won captaincy over the years by bringing in the right kind of insights.
Absolutely. I mean, I can see, some of the conversations where we are already kind of leaning into that captaincy role, versus the other ones where we're sort of knocking on the door. Having this new perspective, and having the real time capabilities to just continue to view that. I mean, this is absolutely going to be next level. So,
Henry, I'm moved here to make sure we pause a minute, because I think if I'm listening to this, one of the things is the foundational way that we've differentiated our data collection. And as the man in orange, as the representative of field agent, give a little reminder here of folks, when we say analyzing planograms or analyzing shelf conditions, we're not talking about hitting a button on a Catman software JDA file of designed planograms. We're talking about real shelf images. Tell folks how we do that.
Yeah, real world conditions, ground truth, we call that. And, there are 5 things that have to be true for share shelf to be truly valuable to our customers and our clients. The first thing is we talked about, it has to reflect the real world. It's not a JDA file. It's not the plan set. Those are great to say, hey, that's our plan, but what's the measure of the real world? Secondly, it has to be cost effective. Storesight, powered by Field Agent, is probably the most cost effective way to go out and get a very broad based perspective of what's going on out there. We know other plans out there that are very bespoke and cost millions of dollars to do stuff like this. We're very cost effective. It has to be unbiased. Our agents who go out and collect this information, they're everyday shoppers. They are collecting the information with no horse in the race. A lot of other folks will have people that are doing the merchandising, taking the pictures. You never have ugly pictures of your own kids. So enough said. And it has to be at scale. We can get to any channel, retail channel, any store, any region, rural, urban, suburban. We can get it to all the place. So it's scalable. We give you a very broad view. And lastly, it has to be ongoing. We have a subscription-based model where it's an always-on model. There's new data coming, refreshed, and then we also give you historical perspective. So it's ongoing. You can get to one store, you can get to a chain, you can get to a channel. So these are all the ingredients that have to be in place for this to be really actionable and credible. Dagan, what have you found to be true?
Yeah, I think all of that 100% is true. I think I think one of the things that you talk about scalability and being cost effective. I cannot think of a single time in my career where my team or anyone that I work with, we've gone out, we've done store walks, and they've said it hasn't been valuable in some way, right? Because it is like, you used the term ground truth. Planograms are one thing, TDPs are another thing, measuring all that. But once you actually get into a store, it really, you really understand the category and what the shopper experience is. I think one of the other things you guys have is the OSA, the on-shelf availability report too, which something we've used in the past as well, which again, unless we have people out in the field walking stores every week, there's no way we ever have any perspective on something like this. And so, like looking at on-shelf availability just in the tracker, this is updated weekly. And I check Storesight all the time, and I rarely pull up Storesight and there isn't a new photo or an updated data point in there for me. So it's just constantly being updated. But the on-shelf availability tool allowed us to to see and identify on-shelf availability for a competitive brand at a retailer before the retailer even realized it. We actually came to them and we said, hey, we've noticed that our in-stocks are okay, but the categories kind of looks like it's down a little bit here. Is there, can we help out? We have some other stuff. We have some extra inventory, or we can bring some more items in to help you fill out the shelf. And that actually for a certain amount of time turned into, again, like a partnership and a short-term win for us, where we were able to help the retailer fill their shelves because one of their other vendors was having some supply issues. So to me, one of the things that really, the scalability and all that, but the real time, like the speed at which we're able to get data and then turn that into an action or an insight. Again, it's game changing for us as an emerging competitive brand.
Well, I'm glad you brought up OSA actually, because you don't think of on-shelf availability as impacting share of shelf if you're doing share of shelf in the past, because you didn't stand there with that clipboard until it was zoned out perfectly or faced out perfectly so that you could do it, or you were plugging those holes to make sure you knew what the shelf tag says, or you were running the JDA file, which doesn't have any holes in it because it's perfect, of course. Or maybe you're asking a merchandising partner to do it, and their job was to make sure that it looked good. So in all those cases, you don't think about out of stocks affecting share of shelf, because again, our historical context here is that share of shelf just means what was the plan, and the rollout, the change is share of shelf is what's actually happening. And so out of stocks matter, right? If you're consistently out of stock, guess what? Your share's lower. I mean, it's that simple. Your share of shelf is lower. The eyeballs don't see it, right?
Sure. Yeah, and like Henry mentioned a point before too, where you had a client who their TDPs were flat, but their sales declined, and it was because placement on shelf changed. If we see our share of shelf jump, or we see our sales bump, we have no idea what's going on. Maybe maybe one of the competitor brand is out of stock, or something happened somewhere else in the planogram. There's no way of us to know what's going on. So you potentially can get faked out with some of the noise when you only have one perspective, but bringing in this other perspective really gives you that full view, and it's on the ground, it's real time, and it's it just allows us to measure, track, and execute just in a new way that for our team, it's invaluable.
Yeah, love hearing that. Henry, I'm thinking about, we're talking to Dagan here at just this rapidly growing emerging brand.
Yeah.
A lot of established partners out there thinking about it, multi-billion-dollar brands out there. I think this is kind of company size agnostic, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, small brands, emerging brands typically don't have the resources for this kind of capability. And Storesight now democratizes this capability. At the same time, the 100 million, billion-dollar brands, they have a lot of resources, but they don't have the ability to do this either. Some people have done this, but they've spent millions of dollars to do this, and they've done their own share of shelf in their own little square, and it's a very proprietary, bespoke kind of way. Storesight has made it and leveled it and said, you know what, we have one standard in which the industry will measure share of shelf, and it's consistent and it's fair. And that's fair across retailers, and it's fair across all categories. We do it the same way, no matter where it is, at Lowe's, at PetSmart, at Walmart, at Costco. It doesn't matter. And that is a breakthrough. No one's ever done that before, and we're really proud of the fact that we are launching this. And it's when this becomes another year or so, knock on wood, when this thing gets adopted industry wide, there will be one single way and a very consistent way of looking at share of shelf. So, yeah, whether you're a big brand or a little brand or a medium-sized brand, we're here for you.
Well, Dagan, you've done them all. Do you agree? You had anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so I came from a Fortune 500 CPG retailer or CPG manufacturer in ConAgra, and we had on our team at Riverside, we have two category managers. We had a big team at ConAgra, and it was still challenging. I mean, there's thousands of stores out there, and being able to keep track of that, we had to house it on our own database and update it, keep everything organized, keep things most updated. And again, we were doing that once a year, and that was a lot because we were doing a lot of other things, and that still is, we had a lot more resources, but it was still something that we were trying to figure out. And I think, to Mark's point, it's a perspective that whether you're big or small, it's still been a little bit of a white whale out there in terms of something that we can, as an industry or as a pillar of the industry and category management, be able to all say, hey, this is the way that we're gonna look at share of shelf. I've seen people calculate space to sales indexes 10 different ways. Whether it's based on scan data or planograms or face or whatever it is. But it's never been based on what's actually happening in the store. So I think it's incredibly powerful when you're able to now pull that and put that together with some of your POS data, look at sales contribution, and actual, real ground level truth, share of shelf, when it comes to store and actual shelf placement. I think that's really like when it all comes together there.
Well, like a lot of things nowadays with technological advances, those unsolvable problems, or frankly, ones we didn't even know there could be a solution for, are getting chipped away at. It's exciting to be a part of doing that. Exciting to have customers and prospects and folks in the industry who are advising us, realizing that it's possible now. This is one of them. You will hear about a lot more metrics that we roll out as they come, but the industry's changing. On that point, why don't we wrap a bow on this, guys? I think we've hit most of the big topics, but let's get some closing thoughts here. So, as we're kind of wrapping up Share a Shelf, or maybe just thinking about broadly how the industry's changing. Henry, I want to hand to you for some closing thoughts and where you'd take our audience.
You know, when you think about where we were a year ago, Mark, we came up with this idea. We started doing the R&D. None of this really happens by itself. It wasn't like Storesight said, hey, we can do this by ourselves. We know everything that we need to know. So we started partnering with our customers and say, hey, if you were going to do Share a Shelf, how would you do it? And so these solutions that come along these days, there's this idea of co-creating with your customers, and we love doing that. We love hearing from people like Dagan and others that have been on the leading edge with us, giving us insights. This is important. This is not important. This is a game-changing way of looking at it. So the industry is only going to change when I think the parties all come together. And we can agree on things that will be objective, and finding new ways to measure it. There's different ways now we can do this. So I just want to put a plug in as we close on co-creation. And we want to hear from our customers. As we roll this out to more and more categories and more companies, we just welcome you guys to come in and tell us what you think, tell us your needs. We did this through Share a Shelf, and we want to do that for other key things that we're developing. So come on down. We want to hear from you.
I love it. Dagan, there's a lot of people sitting in seats like yours out there. A lot of them are listening to this. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great new capability, unlocking conversations that ultimately, result in not just a win-win-win, add the fourth win on there, where, you guys obviously win with the development of the tool as people adopt it. We're helping retailers win. We're winning, and ultimately the biggest win at the end of the day is shoppers. This is all helping shoppers find the products that they want, that they're looking for, find it in the easiest way possible. And so, when you can get 4 wins across the board like that, I'm excited about the future. So
It's got to be good when there's a 4-way win.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Dagan, thanks so much for joining us today. We learned so much from folks who are just banging on this drum every day and trying to actually move the needle for the business.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been great working with you guys, and excited to see where we take this.
Well, Henry, we enjoy this time every time we get to do it. It's good to hang out with you again.
Yeah, Mark. So go ahead.
Well,
Close us off.
I'd love to. Mostly because we still like to get business. So I'm going to tell you, if you want to talk to us about all these crazy new things we're talking about, test them for yourself. Tell us where we're good. And to Henry's point, tell us where we need to improve. We're luckily run by a bunch of practitioners and folks and innovators who want to make it better. Reach out to us at storesight.com. There'll be many places you can click a get a demo button, as our marketing team has done a great job on the website. And click on that, talk to us, shoot us a note. We'd love to talk to you, demo the Share a Shelf capability or any of the other analytics we have, and take you on some virtual store walks. Believe it or not, we are processing dozens of retail banners and thousands of stores every week across multiple categories. The data is piling up crazy quick. I bet we've got something for your category we could show you. So with that, I think we're going to sign off on today's episode of Conversations on Retail with Storesight. It's been myself and Henry and our special guest, Dagan, today. So thank you, guys. And as we always say here at Storesight, let's go.
Let's go. Storesight, powered by Field Agent.